a winner. And the winner tells his story. The winner tells his story. And he doesn't simply tell his story. He tells his story as a weapon against his next adversary. It's not just idle chit-chat. History, his story, his rationale for the war, his version of the victory, he tells as a weapon against his next adversary. I had been drinking a whole lot. This is a history time. You've probably seen him. I hadn't been drinking a lot. And this guy, he was 7 feet tall. He come walking over me, stopping and talking about my woman. I killed him. Now you're telling this to another guy who is actually about 5'2", and the two of you are arguing over a parking space. What you are doing is telling him that in the past I have been able to destroy someone who's like, what, 6 feet 7 inches tall, and that you're only 5'2". That's history. That's the power of history. That is history as a weapon. Now may I make the observation that the gentleman is lying. The truth of the matter is that the guy that he actually had that barroom fight with, the guy was closer to being about 4'11". And he was arguing over the fact that if you are so drunk that you're going to be laying on the floor, don't lay on my toilet. And even if that is the truth of the history, the point is that the gentleman who was telling his story at the time was so drunk that he doesn't remember what happened. But that is the power of history. History is always a weapon. It is the story that the winning army tells to defeat the next enemy. Now, once you understand that, you see, you don't have any time. You don't have any difficulty in laughing at the drunk laying on the floor telling his story to his next adversary. But if that is history, then what about you? What about you? They don't send you to school because they want you to learn to read and write. Who is about every last minute of it is teaching you to accept as truth his story. You can laugh very easily at the drunk on the floor, a victim of his story. What you've got to go do, ladies and gentlemen, because this is, for some of you, very embarrassing. You've got to go home the way that Miss Harris has told you to. Pull the shades down, lock the door, and then go find that mirror. And then looking at yourself. Because, ladies and gentlemen, you see, I have 3D vision back to the side. And what I see in this room, because of what you had to do to get here, is I see a nation of warriors. You've been at war. And I'm saying that this great gathering of warriors, there's no shame in being a warrior. And there's no shame in losing. But understand that every battle that we as a people have endured, and we have endured so many, that every battle we have lost, that he has infected us with his story. And his story is in you, it is around you, it is you. You need to go home. And if it's too embarrassing for you to think about here, you need to go to that mirror in the privacy, pull the blinds, put the cat out, and ask yourself, how many times have I been a soldier on the field? How many times have I lost a battle? And how many times have I therefore been infused with his story? You've got to take a look at all of the battles that lie in front of you. You've got to take a look at all of the warfare of doing business on a day-to-day basis. You've got to take a look at all of the adversaries, the enemies, the competition. And you've got to ask yourself, we're getting ready to go into battle with such and such a company, and he's giving me his story. And is that why I'm saying, no, I'm sorry, we can't go against these folks. They're supposed to kill us. They kill us. You see what? I read it right here in the Cincinnati, whatever it's called. And these people, they did this, they did that. No, that, ladies and gentlemen. That's their story. And that history has you frozen in your tracks. Let me give you an example. I can remember studying countless books, which would in fact confirm one way or another, you know, it's unfortunate. Hey, you know, women are really nice, great, oh, they get in the kitchen, and gosh darn, aren't they just miracle workers? But unfortunately, you know, they're a little, well, you know, madam, they're doing two things here. They're telling you you can't. They're telling you that there's no way you could. They're telling you don't try. They are telling you his story. Now, one shot has been fired in the battle, and you're already dead. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you who have been in Nam, those of you who are in Korea, and I know we have some people who here were in the Second World War, it's not an accident that they dropped all these leaflets on the soldiers before they dropped the bombs. Got another little secret for you. Any of you who are in Nam, okay, we lost the war in Vietnam. And do you know how we lost it? Those little yellow people in pajamas were able to give us his story. Didn't have who won, what are we doing here? We had more bombs, more firepower, more organization, we ultimately had more soldiers. We had more wealth. But just from our boys, I never cease to mention, I don't think we want to go here to kill these so-called boys. Our boys, in the process of just walking around, the Vietnamese were constantly putting his story in their ear, his story in the mind. And when you got out there and your eyes couldn't quite focus because when you're looking through the bomb sights, you couldn't quite your hand. And they won the war. History always has not a single face as a weapon. There are always three histories. First history is the history of the victor, whoever wins. That's his story. The second history is the history of the loser. I mean, if you've ever had two people come to the story, that the loser tells us quite a different story. The third history, and the one that you will never see, is the history of what actually happened. Nobody has a vested interest in preserving that history. The loser certainly doesn't. And the winner is scared to death of it. Let me give you an example of the three histories. I'm going to take you into a period that you are all very familiar with.